Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Dana Scranton, and welcome to a bit of entrepreneurial wisdom. Now, today's episode is about the three questions. What three questions am I referring to? Well, in the prior series I did on using the basic human needs, the six basic human needs, to enhance your marketing and your entrepreneurial effectiveness, I used three questions, and those three questions were developed over years of various entrepreneurial efforts in my attempt to better identify what the marketplace really needed, but also what I, as an entrepreneur, needed to understand in order to resonate with the market. In other words, to take my biases out and replace them with empathy between myself and the marketplace. Make sense? So, in that series that had 6 episodes where we covered the six basic human needs, I used these three questions. And this is a slight variation of them because those three questions are based on my personal experience and I ask them kind of natively, naturally. But in talking to a few people, they were a little confused over how you use the questions. So, this particular episode will answer those questions. What are the three questions? Why are they important? And how do I use them? So, that's what we're going to accomplish today. To do that, I'm going to share a presentation and we'll get right after it. Okay, so six basic human needs in marketing, the three questions. And we will get right after it. Okay, so I want to start with a definition of the entrepreneur that I have developed, and this is my core definition. It's someone who identifies and understands the needs of others, and with courage, conviction, and resourcefulness, connects them with a means of fulfilling those needs and potentially other needs in the process, which we will get to in the course of today's presentation. Now, why that definition is important and why the three questions are important is because it focuses on a human or individual-centered approach. Now, if you've studied marketing at all, somewhere along the line, you may have come across the word avatar or persona. In other words, an avatar or persona is the characteristics of the ideal customer who would resonate with your product and all the various elements of that person's life that you could focus on in order to make the likelihood of your product being chosen by them higher, right? Well, this series of questions, these three questions, have an objective, and it is to identify and understand the needs of the individual that's embedded in that definition of an entrepreneur. And why do you do that? To refine and optimize your communications to the marketplace. Because as an entrepreneur, you are communicating with the marketplace in order to let them know that you understand them and that you have something that they can use. And when you do that, you create a higher probability of success in not only your revenues, but also in improving the lives of the target marketplace. Now, a marketplace is a sum of individuals, right? So when you identify the avatar or persona, what you're saying is, I am interested in that person and all of the other ones like them. And that comprises your marketplace. So, a means of understanding. That's what these three questions are. So, how do we do it? Well, we take the six basic human needs, which were popularized by Anthony Robbins, aka Tony Robbins, a few decades back when he first started in his personal development business. And we overlay those onto the six basic human needs. And when we do that, it gives us a better understanding of what motivates an individual to take an action. And that action we hope to be the acquisition of your product. Now, a side benefit is in this process, you may determine that your product doesn't seem to meet the needs of the marketplace after you go through these three questions. And so you say, well, that points me in the direction of adding other products to what I'm offering the marketplace. So that's a side benefit of this. Now, once again, in my definition, a product is goods, services, or leadership. And briefly, what that means, goods are tangibles, nutritional supplements, air filters, things that people buy on a regular basis that they can put their hands on. That's goods. Services like prepaid legal, uh, investment education, and other things where there may be a digital product, but it's not a tangible product. And then finally, leadership. Leadership is your influence on the market. It is how you make an impact on and move the market because of who you are, what you say, how you work, the value you bring to the marketplace. That's the leadership that I refer to. Okay, now, the six basic human needs. I've gone over these a number of times in prior episodes, but let me just go over them real quickly and the six elements of human wellness, just to kind of point to a few things that you may not be familiar with if you've looked at these in the past from other people. Now, the six basic human needs that I use are certainty, change, growth, connection, contribution, and significance. Now, I've chosen this order in a specific order, but it's not necessarily cast in stone. And if you go back and view the episodes, somewhere in there I explain why, but it basically goes like this because it's a hierarchy. You seek certainty in order to achieve certainty. You need change in order to invest that change in something that produces a result. You must grow, so growth is important. And once you do that, you've changed who you are, which precipitates connection, and connection precipitates contribution. And all of that adds up to significance. That's why I put that in an order. But let me explain where this basic human needs list varies from what you may have seen. It's in that number 2 item, change. Now, early on, Tony Robbins, used variety instead of change. More recently, I've seen people using uncertainty instead of change. So here's the deal. We, as humans, don't have a need for variety. We may like a different flavor of salsa once in a while, and we may want to eat steak instead of chicken all the time, but that is not a fundamental human need. That's a preference. And the same is true of uncertainty. Uncertainty is only the opposite of certainty. If you look at it from a mathematical point of view, if certainty is, say, zero point 0.8, uncertainty is 0.2, simply speaking. I mean, get into the details. So it really doesn't make any sense to use uncertainty as a basic human need because the fact is, humans really don't want uncertainty. They may want change, but as a basic human need, they don't desire uncertainty. So that's why I replaced those two possible terms with this one. Now, going over the six elements of human wellness, there are two terms in there that I have changed from what you may have seen if you're familiar with these. And they are the last two, relationships and financial. Typically, this list might read physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, social, career. But ultimately, going down to the bottom one, it's not really the career that people have a need for. They have a need for the results or the benefits of the career, which is financial. Now, yes, there's personal satisfaction, emotional, intellectual satisfaction from careers, but that's really not where people's foundational wellness is. It's in their financial wellness because that allows you options and choices to influence the other elements of human wellness. Relationships, relationships encompass a broad range of things. It's not just social. It's the relationship health you have with your significant other, with your family, with your colleagues, your peers, your school, your church, your civic organization, the people you hang out with on a Monday night at the bowling alley, or the weekend dance crowd you hang with. Those are relationships, and you want wellness in those relationships, and it's tied to a number of other things. So that's why that particular list is as it is. So when we talk about the six elements of human wellness, wellness in what? Well, there are many, many subcategories, and I've just listed a few here. For example, in physical wellness, it might be fitness, conditioning. It might be weight, posture. the energy level, the longevity, the longer you live, better fitness, appearance, how you look. Those all fall under the category of physical wellness. And of course, each element of physical wellness can have an influence on the other top level elements of human wellness. So we go to emotional. I'm not going to read all of these, but what I want to impress upon you is when we talk about the 6 elements of human wellness, there are subcategories. The idea is to find the subcategory that is relevant to your marketplace and focus on that. Because oftentimes, we will talk about weight loss, right? Just using that as an example. So people say, well, weight loss is the human element of wellness that I'm focused on. Well, why? Is that a physical issue? Is it emotional? Is it relationships? Is it financial? Is it spiritual? In going through these questions, that's what we seek to answer. Because if all you're doing is focusing on weight loss because it's a physical element of wellness, you may be missing the importance of the emotional connection, the relationship connection, and possibly the financial connection, as an example. So, the need for what? Well, here's the thing to understand. The 6 basic human needs can be used in a variety of ways, but I have seen them used oftentimes in an ambiguous manner. Our customers, the marketplace, is not ambiguous about what they need. They make choices based on what they need and desire and possibly even want. But what it boils down to, there is a specific desire or want that we have to categorize as a root need. If it's not a root need, it's probably not the top level driver. Those things influence or drive the need, and the 6 basic human elements of wellness help to identify what that root need is. Okay? Just looking at the 6 basic human elements of wellness doesn't complete the equation. You have to overlay that from the 6 basic human needs. It's the need for what? That's the question we're trying to answer. And when we look at these 6 elements of human wellness, they cover the broad spectrum of our lives. You could add more to it, but let's leave it to 6. All right. So how do we do that? Well, let's take one further step. When we talk about the 6 basic human needs, one of 2 things will happen. They will either be fulfilled or they will be unfulfilled. Now, when we talk about fulfilled or unfulfilled, what do we use to measure that? Well, that's the 6 basic human elements of wellness. These 6 elements, physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, relationships, and financial, we use that as our gauge to determine the impact of whether that need being fulfilled or unfulfilled makes a difference in the lives of our target marketplace. The greater the desire for fulfillment, the hotter that market could be in that particular area. But that's what most people focus on, is where is that need? And when I fulfill it, that's where the marketing message is. Imagine what your life will be like when you lose that extra 30 pounds and your clothes fit well and people look at you and admire you and you have energy and you're able to connect with these other people because of what it did to change your life. But what if that's unfulfilled? What if that need is not fulfilled? That physical need to lose weight. What does that mean? That's another area of marketing. Now, it's not a negative area of marketing. What you're saying is, look, sometimes, not always, packing around extra weight can have a serious effect on your emotional state. Okay? Your emotional state can impact so many other things in life. Isn't it worthwhile taking a look at how to change your life, lose the weight, and acquire the benefits of that, one of which may be reversing any emotional health issues you might have? Okay, I'm just using that as an example. But the bottom line is if all we ever do is ask questions about when it's fulfilled, you're going to get all these benefits, we kind of miss what people are really worried about. What they're worried about is what's going to happen to them if this problem isn't addressed, if this issue isn't fixed, if the state of being isn't improved. That's what's riding on their mind. Some of them, of course, they look and say, "Oh boy, um, when I do this, when I get this weight lost, when my business starts producing all this great money, these are all the things I can do." And that's great. That's a positive attitude. That's living in a world of abundance. Just because we ask the question, well, what if it's unfulfilled? It doesn't mean we're living in a world of scarcity. What it means is we're asking the question, if I don't fix this, what does it mean to my human wellness, these areas? Okay, so that's the purpose of these three questions, is to zero in on what really matters to your target market. So let's get to the first question. Now, I have modified the means by which we ask these questions and made it a little simpler. It's a little bit of a math problem, so let me explain it to you. First of all, we're going to take each of these six basic human needs, each one. We'll take certainty, for example, and we're going to ask these questions of that particular need for certainty. We're going to ask it 6 times on the fulfilled side. We're going to ask the same question 6 times on the unfulfilled side. And then we're going to ask the question 6 times in what I call the so what side. And we'll get to that. So, yes, you're going to take that question of certainty and you're going to basically ask 18 questions. Now, that sounds like a drag, right? Most people won't do it. Some of the questions are obvious. You may think they're not relevant, but trust me, when you ask these questions, you'll start to discover things that you considered to be irrelevant. All of a sudden, they have potential. I'm just saying. But this is what you can do. I mean, you can do other things, but this is an approach, and it's a more thorough approach, and it's a simple approach because it gives you more insight. So, having said that, let's get to the question. So what I've done here is there are 3 columns, A, B, and C. Within those columns, there are 6 items in A, 6 in B, and 3 in C. So what we do, and I'm just going to take certainty as the example, is we ask the question by inserting the appropriate item from letter A and then asking it 6 times in column B and evaluating where the answer falls in one of the 3 options in column C. Here's how that goes. When my need for certainty of physical wellness is fulfilled, my state of physical wellness will be better, the same, or worse. Then we move down the list to emotional. When my need for certainty of emotional wellness is fulfilled, my state of physical wellness, emotional wellness, intellectual wellness, all the way to the bottom, will be better, the same, or worse. Now, there is another column that I didn't add because I don't want to add to your burden here, but it's a natural. Why? Okay, why? You ask that question. It's going to depend on your specific area of focus. So ultimately, at the end of this question, once you get this better, same, worse category, why? Okay. Now, on the other side is the unfulfilled need, and we follow the same protocol. When my need for certainty of physical wellness is unfulfilled, okay, my state of physical wellness will be better, same, worse. Yep, emotional wellness, better, same, worse. Now, this facilitates another discussion. When we say the certainty of physical wellness is unfulfilled, well, you might say, well, isn't it obvious then that their state of wellness, physical wellness, would be worse? Not necessarily. That's why we ask this question. If we're talking to a marketplace that isn't physically active, they're sedentary. It might be an older generation, a retired generation that the statistics point to the fact that they're not all that active. Then what you're looking for here is, okay, if that state of physical wellness isn't fulfilled, if it's unfulfilled, what's the what's the impact? What's the magnitude of the impact on that marketplace? Well, on the surface, you may say, well, it probably isn't that much. Well, that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to question why and then find a solution around it. So why is at the end of every one of these things? So that's the unfulfilled need. Now let's go to the final question, the so what question. Now, I'm going to just back up for a moment before I go into this one. When you ask these questions, you ask them in two directions, as I said at the beginning. You ask them first of yourself. When my need for certainty of physical wellness is fulfilled, my state of, let's say, financial wellness will be better, same, or worse. And you're looking at that from your perspective. The reason you do that is to build empathy, to understand what those questions do for you. Then you flip and you ask as if you were the customer looking back into the marketplace. You're that ideal customer. Now you're going to answer these questions. And most of the time, you don't get the same answers. That's important. Don't overlay, don't have an analytical overlay that says, well, if it's good for me, it's good for them. Don't think that way. Think in terms of the customer. Put yourself in that customer's shoes, in their room, the chair they're sitting in, the place they live, and ask the question from that perspective. Okay. Gives you a different empathy. So, question 3, so what? Indifference. Okay. First of all, you're going to run into marketplaces that are indifferent to some of these needs and the effects on human wellness. Now, you got to be careful here. Indifference. This can be interpreted as the need is not significant, at least at the moment, or perceived to be inconsequential. But that doesn't mean there is no need. All it means is that the target market hasn't associated a need with attainment of a certain need in a physical element area. It is a transitory state. It changes. For example, when you fulfill one specific need, let's say you have a need for connection, all right? You've been isolated. You've been kind of a loner. You know, you're trying to get into a certain business, let's say real estate, but you're a loner, so it ain't quite working for you. So you have a need for connection. When that need for connection is fulfilled, then all of a sudden you have what? You have an expanded business. If it's unfulfilled, you're sitting around wondering where the business is coming from. But what if you're indifferent to whether that need for connection is fulfilled? You just wander through life and you see people here, see people there, and hope that the broker sends you a few accounts here and there. And you really don't attribute that there's a positive reason to have a need for connection of, let's say relationships. So all of a sudden you ask this question, and here it is. If I am indifferent to my need for connection, to relationship wellness, my statement, or my state rather, of, let's say, financial wellness will be better, same, or worse. Now, if they're indifferent, you're going to overlay yourself on this, but let's be true. Or be real about this. There are some things that people are indifferent to, and they're right. It may be that making a contribution, your need for contribution is just not a need. It's not something that resonates with any area of physical wellness. It doesn't matter physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, relationship-wise, or financially. It's good to know where that so what I'm indifferent category is, so you don't waste time on it. But by the same category, by the same token, that category of indifference is an opportunity for the entrepreneur, because if they're indifferent, if you can see a trend in the marketplace by asking this question where there is indifference to a need in a certain element of physical wellness, you may have the opportunity to create a need in that element. So just keep that in mind. So those are the three questions. All right. It's all about questions. From you, the entrepreneur, you ask questions at the end of this. The why, that's important. What are the most pressing needs your avatar has? You can find that in these questions. How do these needs impact their wellness in one or more of the six elements? That's the critical point. Needs are not ambiguous. They have their roots in the need for something that's deeper than just the need for certainty. If they want financial certainty, that's a biggie. So you have to assess that. And what specific area or subcategory of a given element is most critical? You have to break it down for your specific marketplace. You got to sit down and say, okay, look, if I look at this marketplace, and I look at this avatar, and they have a specific need for human wellness in the category of financial, what are the subcategories of that? Is that retirement? Is that excess cash? Is it financial security? Is it peace of mind? You break it down so that you can identify where the real target is. Do one or more of your products have the potential to fulfill their needs or to create more need? What message or communication will resonate the most with the marketplace? That's what you get out of answering these questions and going through the effort. Yes, it's effort to get those answers and ask that question and answer it. Why? In what way can you maximize their realization of benefits? And again, that's why you ask these questions. Once you have a good understanding of the marketplace, i.e., the individual, then you can better target how to drive them to realize the benefits that come from your product. And finally, what are the next level needs and associated elements of wellness? What this does, when you go through these questions, even if you only target one or three or four items out of them, which I recommend you don't do, but it's up to you. It's your time, your effort. What you will find is the next level needs. For example, when, let's just take that category of physical wellness. When their need for certainty of physical wellness is fulfilled, does that then open up the opportunity for a greater magnitude of connection? It could, but that physical wellness has an impact on financial wellness. The connection leads directly to relationships. It can have an impact on emotional wellness. So you look for those areas because you may not have been looking for those, but in asking these questions, all of a sudden it dawns on you that your physical wellness product really, really is resonating with a certain marketplace because of the impact it has on the relationships, the social, possibly the financial. So that's what these questions do. It's all about questions. So that's it. That's the, let me stop the share here. So that's the overview of the three questions. And I know this took a little extra time, but that's how I use the questions. That's what they are and why I use them. Now, you can do your own variation of these questions, but ultimately, at one point or another, because you now know what these questions are, you can use them. Even if you don't do the complete matrix of all the questions and answers, just being aware of this protocol, just being aware of these questions and how the six basic human needs and the six elements of human wellness work together, I will guarantee you it will improve your entrepreneurial success and the impact you make on the market. Well, thank you once again for being here today. Thank you for watching the replay if that's where you saw this. And, I hope to see you out there on that great big frontier of possibilities where entrepreneurs thrive and value is created. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.